Have you ever found yourself after a game of D&D debating over a particular rule that came up and trying to figure out, as a group, how to break it? As a DM, do you get that feeling of dread when your player asks, if you look at it this way? Well, we decided to turn that into a podcast. A group of DMs come together every episode as we discuss how, rules as written, we can figure out how to maximize what we can do with a rule and how we can use other rules to break the game. Each episode, we will be joined by a guest, including DMs from some of our favorite podcasts, and get a sneak peek behind the DM screen from some of our favorite shows as they share their own thoughts and experiences on a particular rule and how it has affected their games. Please feel free to jump in on our discussions by leaving us a comment on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, or feel free to email me at dm@dndraw.com, or send us a tweet to @rules as written and let us know how the rule may have come up during one of your games or how you figured out a way to break the game that we didn't discuss. So, thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm Bethany.
Hey, I'm Tony.
Hi, I'm Ian.
Hi, I'm Jane.
Today we are joined by two DM friends of ours, Ian and Jane, who love playing D&D and are really excited about the topic today of traps.
It's a trap.
Before we begin, I wanted to give a special announcement. In 2 months, Ian will be launching the Dungeon Geeks podcast, a roundtable discussion about each class and race of Dungeons & Dragons. Tune in starting on the 29th of August, as the hosts help brand new players or those that need a refresher on playing D&D. You can find him on Twitter @DungeonGeeks. Now, on to the rest of the show. Bethany?
Okay, so the first one is tell us about what you create, or I guess for Ian, what you are hoping to create or what things you're interested in.
I'm keen to get into the podcasting side of things. I feel that there's a lot of information out there that isn't being given out, especially when it comes to brand new players who have yet to start playing 5th edition D&D. What I'd really like to do is create a whole slew of podcasts that deals with the nitty-gritty, dealing with the races and the classes and the very, very basic first points of information.
Kind of a gateway for new players to join the hobby without feeling overwhelmed by all of the stuff like we do, which is really pretty advanced and detailed.
Absolutely. When I was brought into playing 5th Ed, I did it on my own. I didn't have anyone to guide me. So I found a large amount of nothing unless it was very advanced stuff. So I just want to sort of reach out and help other people that way.
I think that's great. So Jane, tell us about what you do.
I don't know if you'd exactly class it as creating anything, but I do play a fair bit of D&D.
Yes, you do. That is all creating something, Jane.
Yep.
Okay, it counts then. I DM my own games, only modules though, but started with the Lost Mines box set, and then currently on to Storm King's Thunder. And I also am on a couple of podcasts, so I'm on the I always want to say DNR, Dungeons and Randomness podcast and Epic Endings. And soon to be on another one.
You say question mark? Like, if this doesn't go well, we're going to say, sorry, Jane, we're not going to have you on our podcast anymore.
At the end of tonight, it'll be bye-bye.
Aww.
No, it's okay.
No, you're fine.
We're really not judgy. We're just figuring stuff out, too. Okay, good answers, you guys. All right, so are we ready to get into our topic? Which I did not describe well. I just said traps repeatedly, but I think that's pretty much what we decided it would be.
Traps?
Traps. So we don't have any one moment that really, I think, has triggered this conversation on traps, because often for rules we have like, here's this thing that happened in our game. But I could say as a DM, I don't tend to use a lot of traps because I think I've fallen into that mindset of my party doesn't have a rogue when I'm DMing. Yeah. So they're not very well equipped for traps, but I think traps don't have to be, solved by rogues only. What do you guys think?
In my party, we also don't have a rogue, but what we have is a very, very high percepting mage, sorcerer, and he seems to spot everything. So, yeah, that's fun. I love using traps as long as I can actually use the traps.
But even when you spot traps, it doesn't mean you know what to do about the trap. You could be like, aha, over there. There's something amiss.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to
I
be
do
a
have
trap.
to up my trap game, yes.
There is a slight discoloration in this wall. Clearly something is here.
Oh, okay. I do have one trap story I'll share, because apparently I accidentally gave the impression there was a trap. I was trying...
Oh.
Yeah.
That should have been a trap. That was definitely a trap. I don't know why it wasn't a trap.
So apparently my best traps are non-traps. The party was in, well, it's Princess of the Apocalypse. So they were in the Weeping Colossus, which is basically this gateway to the plane of elemental fire. So they're going through these caves that have like lava in them. It's all smoky and full of cinders, bit of a brimstone smell, very ominous. And they enter this one cavern where there's basically 2 levels. They enter at one, and then they can see that there's like basically a wall, and then there's a higher level that was, I think, like 8 feet up. Because of some very high perception checks, they saw that on the other side, like beyond the ledge, high up, there was this little crevice, like a little crack in the far wall. And immediately they're all like, that's a trap. That's where the lava comes in and kills us all. We gotta figure out what to do about that crack.
There was a random frost giant guarding that spot.
He was just standing there. He wasn't guarding a trap. He just literally was like plunked next to it just because it seemed like a good spot. So they're like,
he was
okay,
guarding.
No, he was just standing. So immediately, I'm like sitting there together, they're like, okay, guys. So they all get together. They're like, all right, so he's guarding that crack because obviously he's going to activate something. Lava pours down through the crack. It flows down his level. He stays out of the way, and then it fills our lower area and kills us all. So whatever we do, we can't let him get near whatever it is that activates the trap. And I'm sitting there going...
The walls were like smooth as glass, as if lava had been through there.
And I'm like, I'm just reading the book description, like, here, I didn't mess around. There's no trap. And I'm just sitting there going, uh-huh. Okay, and they're like, so did we see anything that looked like a lever? No, you did not. And they're like, it must be really well hidden.
It's like, darn it, we're having terrible perception and investigation checks.
They're like, but definitely, something's up. So they, like, have this whole elaborate plan where I thought they're just gonna go kill this, what was it again? Was it just
It was a cultist and a fire giant.
Yeah, so they were just like hanging out, and I'm like, the party's just gonna roll through, murder them, and go on about their business, but instead they're like, alright, so we get around and flank him, because we don't want him to activate the trap. So we gotta, like, get on this side, take out the cultist, get around the giant, I'll distract him so he doesn't activate the trap, and I'm like, just sitting there going, why is there a trap? There's no trap! But going, yeah, no, it's all good. So, that's the best trap I've ever made. And then they get to the end, and of course they've killed, like, the cultist and the giant, and they're all like, huzzah! He didn't activate the trap! Good job, team! Like, high-fiving each other. And the whole time, no trap!
There's no trap, guys! There's none!
Yeah, Rachel looked at me like, what do you mean there's no trap? We've searched everywhere. How could there not be a trap? I don't understand. What does all this mean? I'm like, guys, it's not a trap. It's just a small crack that if anyone's small enough, they can slip through to get to the next cavern. It's a tiny passageway. It's not a funnel for lava. I am very sorry. But that was just based on, I gave them, they wouldn't have even seen that crack from so far away, but someone had a natural 20 plus a really good perception on their, so it's like a 32 perception check.
Wow.
So I'm like, of course you're going to spot it. So I think that's maybe is a perception where you said Ian, your sorcerer's coming in, where he's spotting everything?
Yes, every time.
Yeah. But just because they spot it doesn't mean they know what it means. They can arrive at wrong conclusions all their own.
Absolutely. We actually had a wizard's tower that they were climbing. A crazy wizard. The standard fare, 150-foot tall tower. It's 3 stories on the inside. 3 stories on the inside, sorry.
No, they're also called glories. It's cool.
Glories, I like it, yeah. And halfway up the steps, you've got the steps that run around the outside of the wall, but on the inside of the building. And halfway up, you've got a magic rune that turns the stairs to grease and turns it into a giant ramp, flies all the way down. And then right at the top, you had a teleportation trap that teleports them back out to the front door.
Wow.
That's all it did.
diabolical.
I know. I'm not trying to kill these people at this point. It was not until they went
At this
under.
point.
But what was really cool was when they got to the top of the tower, there was a hidden lever that they pulled. Gravity was reversed.
Oh.
So the stairway then becomes stairs. You know, they just climb the stairs, which then gets turned upside down. So they have to climb the stairs again to get to the basement of this tower. And then they had to go through the same traps again. So
Jane's like, oh gosh.
That's harsh, man.
it was great. They had a great time.
So it seems like their traps weren't things that they had to catch to find them. It was more just they had to understand how they worked, really, to use them to their advantage.
The crazy wizard wasn't entirely thrilled about killing people. He just didn't want people to disturb him. So, yeah.
He's just like, please be on your way. You're trolling people.
The magic door knocker at the front door started demanding payments of blood the second and third time they started coming through the door. So,
I mean, that's pretty clear. Yeah, that's not a subtle hint at that point. So I guess kind of that goes into what is a trap. I think there's this sort of like generic trap where you're like, you know, if you go through this tripwire, rocks fall, everybody dies sort of trap. You know, very like mechanical and straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the sort of trap I tend to have the least interest in as a DM. But as a player, when I'm playing somebody with like really good, you know, investigation checks, and I get to find something like that, I'm very excited to be like, "Mwahaha, let me disable your clever trap." So I think maybe that's the struggle. Sometimes the traps that are fun to design as a DM aren't fun for the players, but it seems like, Ian, you found a really good balance with that setup.
Well, as I said, they enjoyed themselves, so that's all that matters.
But it sounds like you had fun too, though.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was laughing at them the entire way around. It was great.
Like, haha, you fools. You'll figure it out eventually. But right now, I have all of the power. So what about you, Jane? Do you use traps as a DM?
I don't very much. I guess I've fallen into... I suppose because I'm following modules, if there's traps in there, obviously I deal with it. But I haven't really thought, until I was like looking through the traps and stuff, obviously before this, I hadn't realised, like in Xanathars, how many different kinds of traps there are, how fun it could be, and why hadn't I thought about adding these in before now?
I had the exact same realization. I was like, man, I've been really doing traps a disservice. Because I was also running Princess of the Apocalypse, and the only traps they really have in there, with the exception of a few magical traps, are pretty straightforward, like tripwire sort of stuff, and I just run it as it is in the book. And typically they find it. Or they fail to, and it's so underwhelming, where I'm like, let me roll, you take 4 points of bludgeoning damage. They're like, well, it's halved because of this. I'm like, you take 2 points of bludgeoning damage, and let that be a lesson to you. Be more careful.
Let me have my 2 points.
I'm talking about Tony's character, by the way. He's usually the one that gets injured because he goes first, because he's the tank, because he's a Goliath fighter, barbarian.
It's like, oh no, my favorite is still like getting hit. It's like, oh, how much is it? It was 13 points. I used Stone's Endurance. Rolls like a 10 plus 4. How much is it? 0.
It is 0 points of damage, and you take all of it.
It bounces off your shoulder.
It tickled.
Yeah, Goliaths, man. They're made of tough stuff. So I think, so Xanathar's Guide, I guess we could talk about, we don't have to talk in any particular order, by the way. We just sort of see where it goes.
I already turned to the page of complex traps because I think that's the one that you might have been talking about, Jane.
Oh, yes.
Basically, an entire encounter within a trap.
Can you give us some examples for those who have not read the book, Tony?
Yes. So there's one that's called the Path of Blades. It's the easiest one that they have. But the trap triggers as soon as a non-undead creature enters a hallway and remains active until any non-undead creature is within the hall. And it actually acts on an initiative count, on 2, on initiative 20 and 10. So what happens is, it includes a set of whirling blades along the first 80 feet of the trap, crushing pillars that slam down from the ceiling to the floor before rising back up to the ceiling in the next 50 feet, and a rune of fear in its final 30 feet.
So I think what we have here is really like an Indiana Jones style sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
trap system where you're like, and then the blade comes whirring and just misses your head. Like, that sort of like...
Only the penitent man will pass.
Yes, exactly. The players just figure it out and narrowly escape. I think it's kind of cinematic, and I like that approach to traps because it's not something I've done personally, but I would like to do because I think it would be rewarding for the players and more exciting.
I have so many ideas with these.
Oh no.
Which you're not going to
Don't
share
worry.
with us because you're
Oh,
going to
no.
be our DM.
Don't worry, the rogue has mage hand. It's fine.
Yes!
Actually, so I think something we could go around to, we can always come back, is what are players able to do to avoid traps, to prepare for them? We've talked about perception and how that's really your go-to for spotting something that seems amiss. But I think you could talk a little bit about Mage Hand, Tony, and maybe give a little slight hint of what's going to be coming up in one of our episodes ahead.
Uh-huh. Well, Mage Hand by itself is actually pretty cool just because you can manipulate things, but the best use of it, in my opinion, is for the Arcane Rogue, what's the actual title?
Trickster.
Arcane Trickster, thank you. My mind blanked. Because it's got the Mage Hand Leisure Domain. I think is how you pronounce
Yep.
that. I hope.
Yep.
Because basically you can do all the things you do as a rogue from a distance. And the hand is invisible.
Yes.
So people can't see it unless they have like true sight or see invisibility.
And this comes up because, Tony...
Because there might have been an instance where a certain rogue, Jane, might have thought, this might be a trap. I'm going to try and disable it with my thieves. Wait. I'm going to back up and Mage Hand attempt to disable it with Thieves' Tools.
It's like, good move. Smart move,
Yep.
Jane. Well played. It's
Thanks.
always better to let the Mage Hand take any damage.
Exactly.
We won't reveal what the outcome was of that check, though. Though, in general, I did enjoy, or also feel pity for your character making checks in that recording. So that'll be fun for people to listen
Man,
to.
that was rough.
You rolled so badly. I felt so bad.
So did I.
But yeah. So another thing that I know that Tony and I have talked about is Danger Sense, which I think has...
I love Danger Sense.
No, but it's like one of the most disappointing abilities to people when they think it's like, I don't know, like Spidey Sense from Spider-Man, where they're like, and I sense danger coming, and I know it's gonna happen, and I can dodge away from it. It's like, well, it says dodge away from danger, but...
But that is kind of what it is in terms of how Spidey Sense is just you dodge faster than normal people.
Right,
so
it's just
advantage.
It's just for your deck saving throws, right? It's not.
Yes.
It doesn't give you an initiative bonus or something like that, which I think is what some people think. But it is very handy when I think you've activated a trap, because most traps end up being deck saves, at least mechanical traps.
So many.
Mm-hmm.
Except for maybe Ian's diabolical magic traps.
Magic
With
traps are the
gravity's
best.
Magic traps are awesome.
Honestly, guys, magic traps scare me. Like, I know that sounds dramatic, but I always am worried about making a magic trap as a DM, because unless it's
It might
something
kill the party?
yeah, I worry about making it too much.
Yes.
Like what's the right level of difficulty? Because I did make a magic trap one time that almost insta-killed a character. Tony knows this one. It did electrical damage.
The one that he tripped.
Yeah, he had lots of indications that it was going to be very dangerous, and he was like, Psh, I'm not worried, I'm gonna be fine. And then he, lost, 60 HP all at once, because
Whoa.
he nat one on his attempts to disable it.
Ouch.
Well, I think it should be mentioned at this point that Xanathars has a really good table to use when it comes to building traps, and about leveling the traps to the players.
Right, exactly.
So that's really, really handy. And of course gives different levels of how much you want to kill your players.
Which is really what we're all looking at as DMs. How much do I want to kill them, or how much chance do I want to give them to escape?
I actually really don't want to kill my players.
No, neither do I.
I'm looking at some of these traps and going, I'm not sure I could do it.
No, the scary numbers to me is when I look at Deadly for a 17 to 20, and it's a 24d10.
Oh.
Is their example roll.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
As a DM, I don't want to kill my characters. I want to almost kill my players. It's like right in that sweet spot where they feel really like epic and alive because they almost died, but they didn't die. But it's really hard to know what that's going to look like until you get the game at points where I'm like, I made a terrible mistake. I've gone too far. They're all going to die. They're all going to die at once.
When you talk about like the magical traps, I'm just looking here because the example that they give in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I think the only example for a magical trap, is essentially darkness fills this like gaping mouth of a stone face in a wall, and you can go and approach it. The darkness is a sphere of annihilation. Don't touch it.
Whoa.
Yeah, like, I think, well, that sort of actually goes into something Tony and I have talked about, and we've seen this, not so much in what we've done as DMing, but in other people's games, where some DMs like to put incredibly deadly traps without giving the players any chance to discern that it's going to be deadly. Like, there's no hints that this thing, which seems really innocent, is going to insta-kill them. Or almost insta-kill them. Because I feel like there needs to be some sort of hints that that's coming.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it feels unfair.
That could be really easily done, especially if you have things like teeny tiny rats around in the dungeon. And so, of course, you find the sphere of annihilation, and they watch as this rat just gets sucked into this.
Yeah, exactly. Little things where they go, oh shoot, that's bad. Yeah, like, your example was perfect, Ian, for how you can subtly say, the world is telling you this is bad.
Absolutely. Kill something minor instead. That always works.
Kill something minor, or give them a chance to notice that something is off, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Smell.
it's too still.
Smell is a great one.
Oh, how would you use
smells
smell?
good.
For
Smells
example, if they were coming up to a gas trap, for example, instead of they roll their checks or use the passive, and it might not be something as obvious as a tripwire or a wonky stone or whatever, they could literally smell the sulfur or whatever gas is leaking out from these vents or whatever. It could be something as simple as that.
Yeah, it's a good point. It could be something really subtle that just says something is amiss, because I think we all know that, for the most part, at least in my experience, players are paranoid. So as soon as you give them something to be paranoid about, they will immediately go into overdrive and suspect everything. So you've given them a full chance to be prepared for whatever is coming, because they're all like, something murdery is here, instantly. So I think we've talked about what checks, I typically would use perception as my check to indicate whether it's smell or sight that something is awry, something is off. But what do you guys use as checks for traps in general? Because we use investigation for that process of actually saying, okay, something's wrong here. Let me try to figure out what's going on.
Well, typically what I do is I'll let them use passive as much as possible, because I really detest asking people, can you please roll perception? Because that's telling everyone, hey, look out, there's something here.
Oh yeah, I never ask them. It's only when they say,
nope,
I'm looking around.
Absolutely.
I'm paying careful attention. I'm like, okay, you can go ahead and roll your perception. They're like, yes!
And then, if they spot that there's something out of the ordinary, they can go and do an investigation. And after that, if they roll high enough, it's either going to be Arcana to disarm it, or Thieves' Tool, Sleight of Hand, or if it's mechanical.
Yeah, okay, so that's exactly what we do as well, because that's basically what the rules say you should do. I know other people who try to do different things, and I think there's some argument that you could do different checks for different kinds of traps. We tried to keep it simple, though I do get a lot of lobbying from people like, I know I don't have high intelligence, so can I just not do an investigation check? I'm like, you can move ahead without an investigation check and just, hope for the best, but you haven't actually stopped to figure out what's going on. You're just like, something looks off. I better start jabbing at this with some thieves' tools.
I think one of my favourite things I've listened to is the fact that they found a trap, they know it's a trap, but they don't know what kind of trap.
Right.
So then they have to figure out how to get around the trap without disarming it. That's when you get some really fun stuff, like using druidcraft to, lock up a stone so it doesn't move and things like that. It gets really quite interesting.
Usually what I would give them for the investigation check would be what is going to trigger the trap.
Yeah.
That's usually what that reveals, so that they could say, okay, this is the trigger, how do we go about disabling that? Because I think the fun part of traps is not for it all to just be checks.
I do like the bit of, even there, a little bit of puzzle solving.
Well, I also like it gives the opportunity for them to have good information and still make bad decisions, which is one of the strengths of D&D.
Absolutely.
We know what we should do, but
Which I still do like, Druidcraft and create a little, or use Wall of Stone and just block the spot that you're pretty sure the trap's coming out of.
oh yeah, we have done that, haven't we?
Something like that. Where you just hear like thunk, thunk, thunk.
How about you, Jade? Have you ever seen any surprising or interesting ways to kind of go through that process of determining what triggers the trap?
The only time that I've kind of really used traps was, when we finished Lost Mines, I did created a one-shot, just dungeon run kind of encounter. It was very Skyrim. I had spike traps and flame jets.
Nice.
So
Classic.
Yes. So it's pretty much, my guys are very big on the perception rolls anywhere. They never go down a corridor into a room without making a perception check. They're always really careful. I don't know why. I can't think why they're so cautious, but
Mystery.
Because apparently you're not trying to murder them, so they should just trust you.
Exactly, right? So they're pretty on top of that anyway, so depending on kind of what they roll, I'll give them information about what's up ahead, and then sometimes I think I use investigation checks as well as to kind of figure out that yes, there is a trap. Can I figure out, what kind of trap it is, what's going to happen? My party doesn't have a rogue.
Which seems to be a recurring thing.
Again,
We seem to have a lot of rogue-less parties. Rogues are awesome, by the way, guys. I love being a rogue.
I kept trying to tell them that.
But I would always give them a chance to try and disable the trap, but if they couldn't, then it'd be a case of trying to figure out a different way to stop it or find a way around it. I did have my sorcerer with the flame jets decided to try dropping to the floor and slithering along the ground underneath the flame jets. I was
How did
like,
that go?
I said, yeah, you can try that. That's certainly fine. I let him get so far, and then I was like, you take so much fire damage because they're still going to get you. Nice try, buddy.
Yeah, that seems about right. It is funny when players are like, this is going to be a foolproof plan. You're like, no, guys, this makes no sense, but okay, sure, whatever works. So, something I think we actually don't have really a rule for, but I wanted to bring up is when, like, sort of that first story I mentioned, there isn't a trap. So, for an example, this would be, for Prince of the Apocalypse, you spend a lot of your time in dungeons, going from room to room, and for a while we had an unfortunate system where they were in the whole mode of, like, okay, we find a door, let's check out this door for traps. And I'm like, none of these doors are trapped. Like, there's 50 doors. None of them are trapped. They're never going to be trapped. I have no interest in making them trapped. But they're like, we want to check for traps. Perception check. Investigation check. We're being thorough. Then we carefully find out the door is locked. I'm like, most of them aren't locked. And they're like, we opened the door a tiny bit, very quietly, and peek through it. It's fun to do that every so often, but it gets to the point where I'm like, we've done this 10 times, guys.
Yeah.
None of the doors are trapped, and they're like, yeah, but that increases the likelihood that the next one is going to be trapped. No, it doesn't. It increases the likelihood it's not trapped. But
the DM is trolling us.
So
it is trapped.
I guess I know I was trying to avoid the scenario where I would eventually have a trap, and I didn't want to say, okay, if there's not a trap, I'm not going to have you make the check, like, don't worry about it, because then eventually when there is a trap, they're going to want to make the roll. But it can be hard when there's, like, I don't know, traps is a task when you're doing a dungeon crawl, where it's like, all right, gotta do the whole trap thing, and it becomes very routine. I don't know if you guys have encountered that problem.
Several times.
Mm-hmm.
It's even better when they get in that one, so you give them a false positive.
Something seems a little off about this door. Like, you notice there's something sticking out from the side of the door frame. They're all like, this is the one.
The one I used was when they rolled, I think it was a 2, actually, on the perception. I said, yep, totally trapped. Absolutely, 100%. There's definitely a trap there. Can't see it, but it's definitely there.
You have your gut feeling is it's there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So they then spent 10 minutes trying to disarm this trap that wasn't there. Cue an argument between players. It was fantastic.
I have messed with my players a few times like that, and I think it was mainly because I was really bored, because it was like so many doors and so many perception checks. I was like, this is driving me crazy. I need something a little fun. Okay, guys, there's something really off about this door.
Oh my gosh. I think if I was designing a dungeon, I'm a bit of a lazy DM when it comes to stuff like that. I'm like, they're all just going to be door frames. No doors, just open doorways. You look in or you don't. Pick your choice.
But door frames, again, can be great fun because all you need to do is walk under one and then, bricks fall on their head. It's great.
They didn't notice the wire on the ground.
Yeah.
So I think something that's in the book, there isn't really a specific guideline. Well, except for to Xanathar's guide, but like DCs, difficulty checks for traps when you're setting them. I typically don't set a DC super high for spotting a trap. Because if there is one, I want to give them a good chance to find it. So I make it it's not a 10, it's not super easy. I mean, they could do that in their sleep. Because got a lot of wisdom in my players.
Hey.
My player characters.
Oh,
so
yeah,
they're good at spotting things.
My players aren't wise, but their characters are.
Says the barbarian fighter who has a flat roll on all int, wisdom, and charisma checks.
But the rest of the group has a lot of wisdom. They're pretty perceptive. So I honestly, I typically just make it a 15 to spot a trap.
Yeah.
If it's something like your standard run-of-the-mill mechanical trap. How about you guys?
Generally, I would have a couple of really easy to spot traps and then one that's really difficult. Not necessarily in that order.
Oh.
So we're learning, Ian, is you're much more diabolical than we are.
Yeah, I've been called evil many times.
Excellent.
I think my favourite particular time was they were going through an ancient tomb. It's been there for thousands of years. They found one trap, which they didn't disarm. They tripped over it. And what happened was this mechanical contraption jerkily, slowly rose from the ground. It looked like a couple of arms with some gears and a boot at the end of one of them. When it finally reached a point where it was high as it should be, it wobbled a bit and then the boot fell on the floor. And then the next trap, they spotted it. Looking back at the last one, they thought, yeah, this will be easy, not a problem. They set the trap off and it was supposed to be a gas trap that had run out or something, just rattled and something fell on the floor. But the next one they didn't spot at all. And within a turn, the floor and the ceiling met. And there was a note on the other side saying, laugh this one off.
Oh.
My druid was very, very lucky to be, not killed.
Oh my gosh.
Oof.
So I think I was looking at the actual rules for like what it says to do with traps and how to solve them, but it's basically saying, use common sense when you're trying to determine whether someone succeeds in a trap or not, because even if you plan for, okay, they'll make this check and they'll do this, players do the craziest things to solve traps.
Yeah.
So there was this one I did. I didn't think of it really as a trap. I was thinking of it as a puzzle, but I suppose it was a trap, Tony. The one where you guys were in that room with like the incredibly convex floor, where there was the gas that was slowly coming into the room, and you saw that there was a vent at the top.
Oh,
So,
yes.
There were 4 levers.
This was supposed to be so easy.
So
This
simple,
was
guys.
such an easy trap. But no, the other players had to go and try and do something really dumb.
So, guys, just explain it. So it's a round room. The floor is extremely convex, and up at the very top, like, center of the ceiling, there's what is obviously a vent that is closed, and there is gas filling the air. As they circle around the perimeter of the room, they find there are 4 levers.
We find this, by the way, before the dumb begins.
Yeah, all they have to do is put all 4 levers down. That's it. It opens the vent, the gas is vented out of the room, that's it. And I was like, this is gonna take them, like that, nothing. Tony, would you like to describe how they solved the puzzle?
Okay, so 2 of the levers had already been pulled. My character knows that there's levers on the other side, so he's just making a beeline. He goes up the convex floor. I'm like the closest to the ceiling, but I'm like, okay, that's as far as I can move, and I'm just holding my breath best I can. So I'm thinking either the other players will get to the levers before I do, or I'll be able to get to the other side. Nice and simple and straightforward. No, the monk runs up my back, stands on my shoulders, grabs onto the vent that's in the ceiling, and tries to use me to leverage himself to screwdriver it open. And then the Dragonborn fighter runs up and helps to turn him.
By turning, like, picking him up and turning him. He's like, use me as a human screwdriver!
That's brilliant.
This is when Rachel just goes to the other two levers and flips them and turns it off.
And then they're just like awkwardly, like Chris's character, the monk is hanging from the ceiling, like, oh, well, how about that?
She's like, guys, come on.
I was going to allow them to solve it that way, but it was just really ridiculous.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said common sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people have it, some people don't.
I mean, to be fair, if they could break it, they would have gotten the vent open, I guess, but it never occurred to me that they would, like...
Try to break it?
No! Not without at least trying the levers first. But then I'm, like, a very boring logical player when it comes to stuff like that. I'm like, let's go for the most obvious solution first, and then see about doing something crazy. They're like, no, crazy thing, go, go, go!
Chris started getting worried that the levers were actually part of the trap.
That it was going to be more gas in the room.
Or the gas was going to light or something.
What I would have done is have one of the levers glowing red hot. That way they have to take damage to be able to stop the trap.
Not if you have
mage
mage
hard
hand.
for them though, because they have a tiefling who's a fire-based
resistant
sorcerer
to fire
and fire-based sorcerer, so he would
they have thought to use them?
To be fair, I don't know. They're kind of a mess when it comes to that sort of stuff. They don't go for the solution that makes sense to me.
I'll be honest, my character probably would have just grabbed it and flipped it because he's like, yeah, damage, whatever.
Hit points for days.
140 plus and rage to make that double.
Wow.
Yes,
So,
Tony's character is the true monster.
Mm-hmm.
what I'd really like to know is who
Yes.
empties the traps.
So when somebody
about
gets
it.
caught in the trap and dies, what happens?
Well, think about it like this. The normal thing goes, oh, there's this tomb somewhere, they hear it in a bar, hear about it in a bar, there's a tomb somewhere, no one's ever come back. It's going to be full of treasure and awesome stuff, no one's ever come back. Okay, fine. So the traps are reset, there's no blood on anything. Where are the bodies?
The trap fairy disposed of them.
It's the special zombies that they all become somehow.
Wait. So you guys know, you guys have seen The Last Jedi, right?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And there's those weird, frog nuns on the island that just take care of everything.
Yep.
I assume there's some sort of dungeon frog nuns who just, scuttle to the traps, tidy up.
Koatoa. You're saying Koatoa go around and clean the...
Yeah. I'm in the
Excellent.
process of creating a dungeon cleaner goblin type character. He's basically the caretaker. And he
That
carries
is
around
amazing.
this little trolley, puts the bodies in, sweeps the rooms up, resets the traps, and grumbles about his job all day.
Empties the bins.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like me on a working day. Every day, actually.
You're like, I could do that in a fantasy world. It would be wonderful.
You can just imagine him trundling around with his cart going, oh, stupid adventurers getting themselves killed again. Ah.
So, I think we've sort of talked about some of our questions. One thing I didn't put on here but occurred to me is, do you guys always think about what the goal is of the traps? Because I know it's so easy to make traps that the goal is to kill or in some way stop the players from going where they want to go. Have you used traps to do something besides that? I guess besides what Ian mentioned with his whole reverse gravity thing.
Yeah. I really, really like traps that don't necessarily kill you, but put you in a position where other people might kill you easier. Like the net trap is a really nice and simple one. Especially when there's, undead or whatever kicking around. Makes it easier to kill them.
I actually like, and it's not technically a trap, but the alarm spell.
Oh, yes.
It's basically, it's part of a
Does
trap.
no damage to you, but alerts whoever cast it that you just stepped somewhere you probably shouldn't.
Yes, Jane is familiar with the alarm spell, right, Jane?
Yep.
Of a recent one-shot?
I just might be, yes.
Yeah.
I like that spell as a kind of trap because it does no damage to anyone who triggers it, but it could become problematic later.
Yeah, I think it's also fun to have traps that are really just designed as entertaining puzzles and obstacles, rather than as something that's actually going to be something that hurts the player so much as maybe hinders them and slows them down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think where it kind of becomes a matter of time, because I think there's been some of the traps, wouldn't you say, in Prince's Tony, that you guys have just tried to decide, do we have time to even worry about this, or do we just roll forward, accept the consequences, and keep going?
I remember one trap, and this was actually one of my favorite moments in Princes, when we realized down this massive spiral staircase that there was some sort of trigger here. We couldn't tell what it was, and we're like, let's not deal with this right now. So we accidentally convinced an Etten to go down this spiral staircase, and then we waited to see what would happen next. And running full speed down the hallway to chase after the Etten was a massive stone golem that just rushed down the stairs to just go beat him up.
Yeah, that was supposed to happen. They accidentally solved my trap, which was that the stone golem was going to, basically pop out of nowhere and attack them, because they actually didn't try to use the Etten as a decoy. They just totally miscommunicated with it, so it got confused.
No, it wanted to go to the It wanted to go to the Underdark, so we said this stairway that descends deep into the earth can take you to the Underdark.
Yeah, but you gave really bad directions. Like, it was the most tragic end for that poor Etten.
Hey, he took care of a lot of the cultists for us.
It's true. It was a very unconventional sort of dungeon because they went following behind the trail of bodies. I was like, well, I guess they don't have to fight any of these guys or worry about the traps on those doors because they've all been smashed to bits. So,
yep.
Good work, team.
That was a fun trap.
Yeah, so I think it is fun also to see traps just be obstacles more than something that's going to just murder them. Though there's also fun in just murder traps.
There's also the idea of, instead of it actually being a particular trap, it could be a secret door. Just, you open it and then hordes of zombies come running out at you.
Or they're like, aha, a surprise! And you're like, yes.
I do think I read about some sort of trap that's like, there's a container of zombies in the ceiling, and if they trigger the trap, it opens and they all just like get dropped and swarm around you.
Nice.
It was sort of a trap, Tony. Do you remember in the beginning?
It was sad.
You can tell it. It makes me sad to think about it. It was like one of the worst things I've ever done as a DM.
Okay, so it was a level 1 encounter. We go to this, what we find out to be a necromancer's cave, and we went up to this chest that's there, I think it was. The rogue kind of started to go up. He's like, ooh, treasure. So as he comes up to it, the rocks fall from the ceiling a little bit, and these two zombies get dropped in. But they drop in from 20 feet, so they take some damage. And one of them took enough to kill it.
So it's like, zombies! Zombie. Oh, okay. And he had 1 HP left. And I was like, this is the worst trap ever. Oh gosh. It was the second time I ever DM'd. I was like, I am an utter failure.
Oh.
But they were thrilled. They're like, ha-ha!
It was a fight.
No one said that a sorcerer had to be clever.
No. It was actually a pretty ridiculous fight because zombies are the worst, guys. It's my least favorite enemy.
Yeah.
We were our own worst enemies in that entire encounter. And by we, I mean Rachael.
That's the one that has been referred to as the session of the Nat ones where javelins were banned afterwards. So we have spoken on this topic
that's
before.
that one. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That was all the same one. So we focus on Rachel's shame and try to ignore mine of me letting my zombies just
Let's face
die.
it. Let's face it, Rachel has a lot of shame. I mean,
At the same time, she's also shameless.
yeah, exactly. It's alright, Ian, she'll kill me later, it's fine.
Okay, fair enough.
I can
be
take
like,
it.
So I think we've kind of talked through different types of traps. We've talked a little bit about puzzles, because I think those could sort of be, I guess, trap-like in their consequences, but maybe not a conventional trap. Is that something you guys have used?
Not yet. I have.
That's ominous.
I think
I can hear the gears turning.
Yeah.
Oh, very much so. I did sort of trap a chest for them on the last session, but it turned out to be a mimic, which is kind of trap-ish.
Oh,
I've
absolutely.
done that.
Mimic is the ultimate it's a trap.
Yeah.
Wait, Tony.
What?
From Orenthal. The rug.
Oh, yes.
Share the story of that amazing trap.
So it's Bai's rug. It was a rug of smothering, and it was just there. However, it's activated if anyone other than Bai or someone who's loyal to her steps on it. but a well-placed fireball that happened to roll at 20, which was its HP, kills it.
Oh.
So we only became aware of its presence as it died.
Yep.
And
It had
Chris was like, yeah!
20 HP. Daryl never trusted Ruggs again.
Yeah. So it's fun when things do not go according to plan.
That was just supposed to be a little bit of a hindrance in the fight, but no, let's just kill it right away. Just kill it.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier, Jade, kind of doing Skyrim sort of themed traps.
Yes.
And I definitely think that's a good way to go because it's something people can visualize.
Yeah, I was thinking again earlier, looking at Xanathars, there are kind of puzzle type traps, and I'd like to play around with those, but at the same time, I'm really bad at puzzles, and puzzles in Skyrim I always sucked at. I always go to my friend and be like, have you encountered this puzzle in this particular place yet? How did you get past it?
Eventually, you just rotate the columns till the creatures line up.
Yep.
That one I can do. But some of the others I was like, I don't know. So I've kind of avoided a lot of the puzzle type things. But I'd like to experiment with them. But yeah, the dungeon I did, it was just spike traps, flame jets, and I had a mimic. And there was something else I had as well that was to do with chess, but I can't remember what I did. Because I know the next 2 sessions after it, one of my players was freaked out about chests. And any chest he encountered, it was like, it's trapped! I'm not going near it! I was like, yes!
Paranoia
That's the way to do it.
Success. Yeah, there's one of the traps I really want to use, but I haven't had a time that it made sense, was to do, like, poison dart traps. Because I love those in movies. They always look, like, cool, like, those little darts shoot out. And those are usually just like standard pressure plate sort of stuff, so I think it's easy for people to conceptualize.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a time where it made sense to use one yet. But that would be kind of going back to Ian's question, is who puts the darts in the trap? Because obviously it doesn't just,
Magic.
spawn them. Oh, is it magic?
Well,
No, magic.
Never once is it stated that, you walk through this corridor and you see a whole load of darts on the floor.
It's true. And then you see the body of another dead adventurer lying ahead that has not been tidied up yet.
Exactly. And then, you see this little stone move and this little... No, I'm not going there.
I actually think that would create, like, an even more interesting atmosphere. Like, you walk into a room and you see bodies. And they're, like, all pierced. And it gives you a hint as to, like, the potential danger ahead of you, but you don't know exactly what.
I like that.
Yeah.
That, to me, like, creates a better atmosphere than just, you see an empty corridor.
But it's suspiciously clean.
Yeah.
Very clean. It actually has like a little label that says like cleaned for your convenience. With
Little
a mint.
check sheet.
Figured it out. Oozes. Oozes clean everything.
Oh, oozes. I love a good ooze.
I do too. Like, I think they're cute, even though they're terrible. Tony likes oozes especially, I know.
Well, it's because of Glabagool.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, the story
It's
of
such-
the friendly ooze, which we've shared
It's
before.
so weird. It's just so weird. And it's in the book. I didn't make that up. It's legitimately in the book.
So, if you want to have a friendly ooze, play Out of the Abyss.
Yep.
It will, like, really steal your soul and drain your energy, but you do get to meet a friendly ooze.
Yep.
Makes
To
it
all
all
those
worthwhile.
So the other mechanical trap that I'd want to use besides the darts, is the, I believe, sure what they call it, but I mean, it's the rolling sphere, and we all know it's that big rolling rock from Indiana Jones. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
it's cool, it's cheesy, it's cinematic. I want one. I think it'd be exciting, but I can't use it now because my players are such high levels, they would literally be like, it's just a big rock. Like,
No. I use my special, movement stopping sphere thing.
Why not?
I stop it. I rage and I punch it.
yeah, that's what they
A cast punch.
I mean, that would be pretty cool too, but yeah, something.
Yeah,
I'll
it is
save some
actually
of these
called
for-
Rolling Sphere.
My
for
dink-
future games.
My dinky little gnome would be in trouble, that's for sure.
You're like, oh no! Run.
You could always cartoon it and see if you can get on top and run.
Yes.
It It is D&D. There's no reason you can't try.
Exactly.
Note to self: put rolling sphere trap at some point.
Again, it's in Xanathar's guide.
It's true.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so it all seems like we're saying you should buy Xanathar's Guide if you want to run traps, because there really isn't much in the book otherwise, which I think is why I haven't really given traps much thought until I was reading Xanathar's Guide. Like Jade, I was like, oh.
I like the complex the complex traps in Xanathar's Guide. They're really cool
But they
and give
do-
me so many ideas.
And they give you they do a good job of breaking it down, like, okay, here are the things that you need to describe that they can see, here's what activate, here's the trigger, here's the checks, so it makes it easy for you to run as a DM, but still give that sort of atmosphere of, I don't know, I was going to say paranoia, but, you know, where things are just...
No. Paranoia's right. Fear is correct.
Exactly.
Definitely. What's talking about triggers? One of the best things I find about triggers is that, especially with a magical trap, the trigger could be anything. I heard on one particular podcast about a trap which was set off by someone who wasn't lawful good.
Whoa.
Ooh.
It's really good, because I think it's interesting to have different triggers, because I think the traditional ones are, if you move into this space or step on this thing, then boom,
It activates.
trap.
Yep.
But there
But,
could
like-
be other more complex factors.
Well, that's the thing. Glyph of Warding even specifically mentions it doesn't have to be just, oh, you move into the area. You can have, oh, if a specific person comes here, or if, you know, you teleport away, or you cast a spell, or you're not lawful good.
I think the one thing I'd be careful about is, unless you want a trap that is definitely going to happen as part of the story, to make sure you're not building something that they can't succeed at or in some way avoid. Because I definitely have seen some traps built in other games where it's pretty much impossible, or it is impossible for the characters to succeed. Because I think they always need a chance to overcome and feel heroic. Or, if it does go wrong, to deal with the fallout and still have it be something that they get to handle themselves and have agency in that moment.
I think the other one as well is, as a DM, not to metagame too much, in that if you are having a magical trigger which is about how they stand, being lawful good or whatnot, you've got to make sure that it's not tailored specifically to them.
Yeah. Yes,
Right.
I see what you're saying, where you're like, because I'm your DM and I've read your character sheets, I know what you will fail at.
Exactly that.
The only time I would say to do that is if the enemy has essentially been studying the party and has made specific points of learning their strengths and weaknesses and has set up their lair or traps to stop them.
That's true.
That's the only time I would say to, yes, no, this is the specific thing that will go against them. Whereas otherwise, no, 100% agree. Don't make a trap that's specific to, like, stop a party member.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never have a villain specifically design things for a particular party, Tony. You have nothing to worry about.
No, of course not.
She would never.
I'm in the final sessions of a multi-year campaign.
We're fighting
guys.
a god of trickery.
Ooh.
So I might be doing some traps.
Who's been studying us?
Ooh.
Who has been studying us?
Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier about what can you do to avoid traps beyond just making checks. Let's talk about that, because that might kind of play it. So we've talked about, you know, having danger sense, or using mage hit to disable traps. I think the other one is there's a thief's ability. Is it, Tony?
Fast hands.
Fast hands? Is that the thief archetype?
Basically, yeah, it's the thief archetype. It lets you use your cunning action so bonus actions to disarm traps, pick locks, use objects, basically any sort of sleight of hand type of check, but as a bonus action. So you can do everything faster.
Ooh.
With your
Which I think is kind of neat, which
Speed
also means
hands.
like in combat or if you're in initiative, it does mean that the rogue can be like locking doors or unlocking doors, in order to help get you out of there a little bit quicker, or maybe to lock the door so more enemies don't keep coming in as you're dealing with a fight,
Nice.
or dealing with a trap in the corner so you guys have a getaway.
Yeah, we haven't had a thief, so we haven't seen this in action, but it sounds great.
Yeah,
It does. And then they can use like a hand crossbow or something to shoot somebody, because they'll still have their action.
Nice.
So yeah, so I would hear Tony the Dungeon Delver.
Yeah, so the Dungeon Delver is a particular feat you can take that alerts you to hidden traps and secret doors in dungeons. Of course, people read that and are like, oh, I can just know where they are.
No.
No, it's advantage to find things. So if you're specifically looking for a secret door, you do get advantage on the roll. Whether or not there is a secret door is not important. You also, and this is like a major one to me, you get advantage on saving throws made against traps.
Oh.
And resistance to the damage dealt by traps.
Oh, nice.
Then the last thing, and this was something I think I heard mentioned that it was a little bit of a redaction from Sage advice, but you can search for traps while still moving at a normal pace. So you don't need to move at half speed to look for traps. But I thought this was like a really neat one that's very underused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if the DM's not using a lot of traps, then it makes this feat kind of useless,
Yeah,
sadly.
that's true.
But if you're constantly like dungeon, well, I was gonna say
Delving?
dungeon delving, but that's
Uh-huh.
redundant. But anyways, if you're dungeon delving and you have a big enough party that you want to really specialize, and you don't have to be the rogue then really to kind of help on just going through and finding the traps, right?
Yeah, true.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even if you don't have a rogue.
Right, that's a good point. So this kind of is like, all right, you're our guy. You go find those traps for us.
Yep.
Give it to the ranger.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're going to be a ranger, you might as well be a ranger rogue. Tony and I have talked about this extensively.
Or just take the spell Find Traps.
Yeah, so let's talk about find traps and how that can kind of disrupt a lot of the stuff we've talked about.
Wait, that's a spell?
Yes.
There is a spell. It is
I did
a
not know
second
this.
level ranger, cleric, or druid spell called Find Traps.
Oh. Huh.
So it allows you to sense the presence of any trap within range that is within line of sight, and the range is 120 feet.
Wow.
Trap, for the purposes of this spell, includes anything that would inflict a sudden or unexpected effect you consider harmful or undesirable, which is specifically intended as such by its creator. Thus, the spell would sense an area affected by the alarm spell, a glyph of warding, or a mechanical pit trap, but it would not reveal a natural weakness in the floor like an unstable ceiling or a hidden sinkhole. And it does say the spell merely reveals that a trap is present. You don't learn the location of each trap, but you do learn the general nature of the danger that the trap poses.
So in a
Interesting.
sense, this lets you sort of, I guess, have you guys played Dragon Age Inquisition by any
Not
chance?
yet.
I've played a little bit.
So I was gonna say, if you click, I don't know, you probably played on PC, not Xbox, but if you click in the thumbstick, I'm sure there's a different key for it. You can sort of send out a little ping that gives a little ding
Yes.
sound when there's something of interest nearby.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is that, I think, basically, but just for traps. Like you're like, bing, and it's like, there is a trap nearby, and you're like, okay, it's somewhere in the magical golden circle area of what I can see. That's how I would visualize it working from a magical perspective in my head.
How's that go again, Bethany?
Bing! Sorry, I do lots of really terrible sound effects.
I like it.
I must admit, I do like the way that the spell is worded, because it sounds like a lot of people have tried to get around a lot of DMs with this.
I'm pretty sure this was the wording of this spell was chosen very specifically.
Well,
Yes.
it is pretty clear that all of the traps we have talked about would fall under the purview of this spell.
You have magical, that alarm spell, which doesn't actually hurt, but you have glyphs of warding, you have actual physical traps.
But it's not going to tell them if they're crossing a rickety bridge if it's going to suddenly collapse and be a danger to them.
Unless
Nope.
it's trapped.
Unless it's actually trapped. Yeah, so it seems
Yep.
it needs to be an effect that was created, is my understanding. That's what makes it a trap, as opposed to just something that's happening.
Yes.
Yes.
It says the effect must be intended to be considered harmful or undesirable by its creator. So it must have a creator of some sort.
So I now just imagine someone casting that spell and all they hear is, "It's a trap!"
They're like, where did it come from? What is it? Who said that? Looking all paranoid.
Well, then, they don't know where it is, they just know that there's one there.
Somewhere within 120 feet.
But yeah, it's a pretty great spell, but it's not a cantrip. It can't be spammed. So it'd be
No.
something that you really need to use when you don't have another option.
Like they've just
Yeah, it's a second level spell.
hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why no one uses it or has ever heard of it. You're like, there's a spell for that?
Yeah.
Because it's so specific, and it really is going to cost you to use it, but it could be a lifesaver, I guess, in a certain scenario.
It really could, especially if you don't have a rogue.
Yeah.
Or if the rogue's just been killed by, a rolling ball of death.
Yes, because they rolled poorly.
Because they rolled a 1.
So, Tony, I guess that kind of goes into freedom of movement, which is one of those abilities that I am very underwhelmed by.
It's very specific. So, you touch a willing creature, its movement is unaffected by difficult terrain, and spells and magical effects can't reduce its speed or cause it to be paralyzed or restrained. It also states that the target can spend 5 feet of movement to automatically escape from non-magical restraints. And then being underwater imposes no penalties on your movements or attacks.
So how does this apply to traps, Tony? That you were thinking.
In my mind, it's the traps that don't necessarily just harm you, but trap you. So the net trap or a rope that can catch your leg, freedom of movement can let you just slip right out.
I have to ask though, with this particular spell, does that mean you can't be grappled?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Your
the only time
speed
I've
cannot
ever
be reduced.
Yeah.
Okay, I will be keeping this away from my players.
Like, don't worry about freedom of movement. It's very boring. Not at all an interesting spell. Not flashy. Don't worry about that spell.
So, actually, rereading it briefly, it sounds like you can get grappled, but then you just use 5 feet of movement to get out.
Yeah.
You don't need to do a contested roll.
Spend it, yeah.
Yeah, because it says the target's movement is unaffected by difficult terrain, but spells and magical effects can't reduce the speed or paralyze or restrain the target. A target can spend 5 feet of movement to automatically escape from non-magical restraints, such as manacles, or a creature that has it grappled. So it can just use 5 feet of movement, and it's not grappled.
Nice.
Yep.
That's really one of the strengths of the spell, but it is also something you would have to cast ahead of time. Or I guess you could cast it on yourself.
Or cast it on a friend within 5 feet.
I'm not very strong. I can't help you escape this grapple directly, but here you go. You got this, buddy.
It lasts an hour and is non-concentration.
Nice.
That's actually quite handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even for non-trap scenarios, but
Yep.
I think it's the one where you're getting actually restrained in some way or held back, or at least maybe not. Well, I guess it is restrained.
Yeah, it's restrained or paralyzed. Then you're not.
So I have seen traps that paralyze PCs, and I've never wanted to use them. Maybe I'm being too squeamish, but I don't like the idea of someone literally having no recourse at that point.
That they're just stuck.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically they're a party, and someone else will bail them out, but
Theoretically.
it is tough to be completely, out of it. Like, you're just like, well, I'm now helpless. I can do nothing. But I guess someone could cast freedom of movement on you, and then you'd be fine. If you happen to have a friend who has it.
Which is a level 4 spell.
So the moral is be nice to your casters.
Be nice to your bards, clerics, druids, or rangers.
Exactly.
Remember,
Yeah,
guys,
so-
feed your bards.
Yep.
So I know we've talked a lot about rogues, actually, as the masters of trap solving, but Rangers pretty
Because they
great.
are.
Rangers are pretty great, too. And a Ranger rogue is a really good person to have for most of your
Yes,
traps.
Ara was amazing.
Yeah, that was my character. No, I mean, in general, they have a lot of the access to the spells that will help you get out of those trap scenarios.
They also just have a really good synergy overall.
Yeah, so if you're looking to go into some sort of campaign where there's going to be a lot of traps, I highly recommend having one at your side. At least a rogue, but a ranger rogue would be good too. And also that'll keep you from getting lost and starving to death in the wilderness.
But you can't take a hit.
Well, that's true, but you're not supposed to take hits. You have friends for that.
Something armor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think the next thing you have on here for spells, this isn't a way to get out of dodge. This is the Glyph of Warding, which I believe you have used, Tony.
I have a couple of times. One in particular was when in Out of the Abyss. This was a homebrew part of it for your personal story, but with Roland.
Yeah, this was my character's mentor. My ranger mentor who taught me how to survive and kill monsters and that sort of stuff.
So he went a little crazy because it is Out of the Abyss, and that is a major part of the book. Madness is fun sometimes.
Everyone goes crazy. Everyone. It's exhausting. You're like, oh, another person we come to rescue and they're crazy. Okay, time to break out the restoration spells. Hold on, this is gonna cost us.
100 gold each time.
Ooh.
Oof.
We might have had someone where I said, we don't have the money to help you right now. I know you're crazy, but I'm very sorry. The madness will get better. We just need some more money.
We need to sell some of the stuff we've collected on our adventuring.
We're just going to keep you in shackles until then, but everything will be fine. Yeah. Life lessons learned from the Underdark. They're not great. They're not pleasant. But anyways.
I was going to say, he kind of set up his own hunting area. So he would move in and attack larger groups, and when you guys showed up, he attacked you and ran. And when you ran after him, you started setting off the other glyphs that didn't go off because they weren't set for him.
Yeah, it seemed really obvious after it happened, where I'm like, oh shoot, I should have known he would have this spell and this would happen, but at the same time, he was gonna get away, so I just had to, deal with it after the first one and know that I was probably gonna hit another one. But otherwise, he would have escaped. Tony's diabolical.
Hey, I had fun. He had also Conjure Barrage, I think was the spell, and it actually says that you can store a spell in the spell glyph, and he would run down a tunnel and turn, just as you guys ran down the tunnel and triggered the Conjure Barrage glyph.
Oh, nice.
That just filled the tunnel with arrows.
Yeah, a bunch of arrows shoot out of nowhere and, pelt us with lots and lots of damage. It was very well done by Tony.
I think I need to do one of these.
It's so much fun. And this is one enemy that just set the stage.
Yeah.
Because he knew we were coming.
Yeah. Now, Sentinel kind of finally, once you hit him with it, his reducing his speed to 0 stopped him.
Oh yeah, we basically caught up to him and clocked him.
You had the one, you had the Sentinel feat, and as soon as he got close enough to hit, killing the speed, that stopped rolling. So after that point, he was done. But
yeah, I think traps are interesting because they also, that sort of made it the chase more engaging, because otherwise we would just have matched him for speed and it would have been much of a chase. So that meant we had some obstacles to overcome, and we had to decide, are we just going to keep moving forward, assuming there will be more traps and take damage, or do we stop and try to look for them and not run through all the traps? We decided to run through all the traps. It worked out okay. I think I didn't do great, though. I had a decent amount of HP.
You took a lot of damage.
I did. I was like, I hope I don't die from this. This might be a really bad decision. Oh, God.
I think it was 3d8 every trap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was the Ranger Rogue.
Squishy.
Yeah, I was squishy. So I think that was a really good use by Tony of having just really one spell, or I guess 2 spells used together in an interesting way to create a trap scenario that was unconventional.
I had a lot of fun with it. I was going to say, the traps weren't, incredibly lethal individually. It was the entire encounter that was potentially lethal.
He's in my defense.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. It was a good session. But then I was like, another one? Jeez, Tony. I know this guy's he's suffering from madness and has lots of free time, but gosh.
You haven't seen him in months. He's been setting stages all over the place.
Yeah, he was like, they're gonna come and murder me. I gotta defend myself. So, we just wanted to talk. But instead, we hit him over the head and knocked him unconscious. So, everybody wins.
Beware fleeing people.
Yeah. They might not be running from you. They might be running to something.
Yeah.
Generally, for rules is written, we're trying to figure out if there's something wrong with the rules or something that we need to supplement them. Overall, because of Xanathar's Guide, I think the rules for traps are really complete and useful. Without Xanathar's Guide, they're terrible and don't help you at all. So
without Xanathar's Guide, they're too simplistic.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they expand upon it. They give you more tools to kind of create your own. And it doesn't have to be just you trip a wire and the trap goes off. It can be you walk into the room and the rolling stone keeps rolling.
Yeah, exactly. I think it provides a good amount of variety, but as we've seen from talking to Ian, especially, he has a lot of diabolical ideas for totally different types of traps. But I think but you can still follow the rules as they are, I think, to achieve what you're going for with those different spins on, I guess, traps in general. What do you guys think? Is there anything you think is missing from the rules as they're written for 5th edition?
In terms of traps, I think now they've covered pretty much everything we need. Maybe some more detail on different types of magical traps. I know that they told us about the Sphere of Annihilation, but there are many, many other ways that you can create traps using magic. For example, there's a glyph that holds spells.
Yeah.
They're so much fun.
Yeah, so I think there is opportunity for creativity there. What about you, Jane? Is there anything that if you were building a trap, you feel like the rules don't cover at the moment?
Not that I can think of currently, because I haven't really played around with traps too much.
But you will now, right?
I will now. I'm already thinking. Yes.
Yeah, so I think Xanathar's Guide really makes a difference. If we'd recorded this episode like a year ago or pre-Xanathar's Guide, I think we would be having a really different conversation where I would be recommending to look at... There are still a lot of great like trap guides and references like on the DM's Guild that you could purchase with every trap under the sun. But for now, I think if you're getting started and want to have traps in your game, Xanathar's Guide is where it's at.
Definitely.
Yeah, it does a fantastic job of giving you, like, why certain traps can work really well and how you can put them together. Or here, just use this, spinning death ball.
Yeah, spinning death ball. It's a classic. You can't go wrong. So, I guess, Ian, how did you get into tabletop role-playing games?
Well, for this, I entirely blame my wife. As lovely as she is, she decided a couple of years back to get me the starter set for Christmas. After reading through the instructions, it was a very difficult transition to, teach my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old at the time how to play D&D when I didn't know myself. Shortly after that, I found a group, started working out how this whole game works with the help of a couple of others, and this was Christmas last year, so I've only been doing it for about a year and a half, but I'm now at the point of writing my own campaigns, doing as much homebrew as possible. It's great fun. I love it.
Yeah, welcome to the dark side.
Oh, yes.
So how about you, Jane?
My story's probably the same as a lot of people out there. I watched Critical Role and Titan's Grave and other shows like that on Geek and Sundry and just fell in love with it, and I was like, I want this. So
I want to be part of it.
Yeah. I decided to teach myself and drag my best friend into it with me, so, yeah.
Recruit. We like to use the word recruit.
Sorry, recruit, yes.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of us either get into it. Ian's story, I think, is kind of unusual. Almost everyone I know was recruited by someone. Mm-hmm. We were recruited by Rachael. Or did the recruiting, which I think is one of the strengths of the whole community. I was going to say hobby, but not just talking about the game itself, but the people, is that we're all here looking for connections. And I think that's interesting how it's a little different how everyone enters, but we all kind of end up in this similar place.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
So far.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess, Ian, this one is sort of a in-progress thing of how did you get into podcasting? So what has sparked your interest in podcasting?
Well, in an effort to discover how D&D works, I went on a binge of every single possible podcast to listen to. And I'm a bit of a connoisseur now. Of course, finding you guys really, really helped. I think after a while, I just realised that, again, there's nothing out there for the new player. So it's people like yourself, people at the rules episodes and things like that. It's really sort of driven me to push that way.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think is a bit of a gap. I think there are some resources out there for new players, but often they're kind of buried amidst the sea of much more sophisticated content that is just fabulous and everywhere. But I think it's easy to just feel overwhelmed and oversaturated with, I don't even know what these words mean that are happening everywhere. Because once you're in it, all of it makes sense. But when you're still trying to get into it, can be a bit of a barrier to entry, I think.
Absolutely. And again, as Jane mentioned, Critical Role, that's one of the biggest downsides, I suppose, to it.
We can still be friends, right, Jane?
Yes.
No, I think this is something we've talked about, Jane and Ian and I, before, and I think Ian and I are supposed to talk about again with Giuseppe on the Bookworms podcast down the road, about how our thoughts on Critical Role and other shows, I think, that really bring a lot of people into D&D and the positives and negatives of that whole facet of the experience, which I think the biggest thing that I really appreciate about it is it brings people like Jane in, who would not have been exposed to the games or, had a chance to really see, this is something I want to be part of, because we want more people to be part of what we're doing. But anyways, exactly. I'll save that conversation for another time. We're glad you're here. So, Jane, how did you end up getting into podcasting? Because you're on 2 podcasts right now?
Yep.
Soon to be 3.
Soon to be
Question mark.
I think similar to Ian, really. I was watching Critical Role, but then I was like, this isn't enough. I want D&D while I'm at work. So I
need more.
I need more. I need my fix. So I started looking up podcasts and listening to them while I was at work, and then kind of jumping into Twitter and following everything on there. And then certain podcasts, they had forums and stuff. And normally I don't really jump into things like forums, and because they can be a bit of a minefield. But True. The D&D community on a whole, I just love it. I've just found that it's very welcoming and very, very friendly and just very helpful. And so I kind of just dived in. And because of that, it led to an invitation to be on a podcast, which I never in a million years thought someone like me would be on a podcast. So there you go.
That's what we all think. We're all like, I'm just a regular person. Yeah. This is for I don't know, special people? I don't know what that would mean, but obviously it's for those people. And then you're like, oh, no, wait, we're all just people.
Yep.
It was like,
does that make me one of those?
Me? Are you sure you meant to send this message to me? Did you get me mixed up?
We won't talk about it now, but I'll briefly mention that we talk about imposter syndrome a lot outside of the podcast.
Oh,
it's rampant across so many creators in the community. And I think that's one of the things that's good about being in the D&D community is a lot of us were like, I mean, I'm just a person. I'm just doing the best I can. I'm not really that great. Other people are great. So everyone's really nice to each other. But at the same time, we're all like, oh no. I mean, maybe they'll all realize that I'm no one. I'm just like a person at a computer.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thing.
Yes.
All right. So I think I probably know the answer to this question for both of you guys, but what's your favorite RPG system to play, or tabletop RPG system?
That was tough.
I know. Out of all the ones you have played, which one really stands out?
In truth, I think 5th Ed is elegant. It's structured well. Yes, it has its flaws, but I don't see how it can be improved, quite frankly. So everyone keeps going on about all these other systems. One day I'll get there. One day.
That's where we are too. I'm slowly getting there and having exposure to another system and another system. But I keep coming back to 5th edition because that's where the community is, I think. There's a lot of strength to that. And it's just so accessible compared to a lot of other systems. While really sophisticated and complex can be just completely overwhelming.
Well, again, if my 6-year-old can handle it, it's fine.
Yeah. So how about you, Jane?
4th? No, just kidding. 5th edition.
Yeah. I was like, who are you? Do I know you? I mean, no. Lame. I actually do know people that love 4th because they're really into it for the miniatures combat side of things, which I understand. I have not played 4th. We did 3.5 and skipped to 5th.
I enjoyed listening to 4th edition being played, but actually playing it myself on a podcast, oh boy, no. No, thank you.
Someone described it to me once as crunchy.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. And overwhelming, and frightening, yeah.
Yeah, I think 5th edition's not perfect, but something Tony and I have talked about, and I'm sure you could speak to as well, Tony, is that 5th edition, you could kind of jump into, you don't have to have any previous systems, but if you've played like other types of role-playing games, like video games, there's enough similar, I guess, forms there that you could kind of pick up on, okay, this is how these things work because I'm familiar with these concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just simplified a bit.
I'm just thinking, we've been playing, D&D overall, for what, 5 years? 6 years?
I think 5, yeah.
And
Oh, man.
I know. And even then, we're only just really getting into other, like, types of tabletop RPGs, but it's still the easiest one overall to kind of, like, pick up, learn a little bit, and play.
Well, like you said, Ian, kids can learn it, so it can't be too bad.
It's definitely a nice gateway.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I'd say that's been my favorite thing about it is how accessible it is, and I think that the timing worked out with, Critical Role and other shows, and then the switch to 5th edition with it being something that people who have been outside of the hobby can step into and say, oh, this is fun, not, oh, what is happening, which I think might have occurred in the past before where it was just kind of overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
We somehow survived our first game. As players, not as characters. As characters,
Both.
we
No,
deserve
you
to
mean
die. Our characters were terrible. We've referred to this before on the podcast, so I won't go into it, but our characters were terrible. Okay, so I saved the hardest interview question for last, if you guys are ready.
No.
Okay. All right, Jade, Ian has to go first because he volunteered. So, Ian, do you have a favorite memory or moment that you're most proud of as either a DM or a player?
Not too long ago, must have been about a month and a half ago, I had a player who decided he wanted to go from fighter to cleric. And me being me, I decided that just being able to multi-class is not enough. So I set up the trials. As I understood it, the player himself actually wanted to become a death cleric, clerical clamavor. So I set up these wonderful trials of making sure that he has the correct temperament, making sure he can choose correctly, yada yada yada. Ended up killing the character, and
Oh.
well, it was a dice roll,
Yeah, it happens.
It does happen. I did make sure he knew from the word go that there was a definite chance of him not surviving, and this was the first character death I've ever had to deal with, and the look on everyone's faces when I asked the question, "Can you please hand over your character sheet?" It was really, really awesome. It was so good. I want to make you feel more.
You like that gut-wrenching expression on their faces.
Yes, definitely.
The sense of loss. So how about you, Jane? Favorite memory?
I always struggle with these because I never have any, huge stories. It's always kind of little things with me.
No, I think the little things are just as valuable. Most of my favorite moments are little things, not epic story moments, but do you remember that time when Rachel's character became a regional cheese inspector? Yeah. That sort of thing.
Excellent. A favourite moment from... oh no, I best not say it. Ian's going to listen. Oh. I was going to say favourite moment from Epic Endings. I best not.
No, go
Spoilers.
for it. I'll catch up at some point. It's fine.
Are you sure?
Okay, Tony,
Okay.
you'll put a spoiler for Epic Endings.
I will make a
tag
comment
here.
of spoiler.
It's been out already. The episode's already come out, but it's just that Ian's not listened to it yet, I don't think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I think I know what this is. Then.
Yeah,
Go
you probably
ahead.
do. Was when Thea was exploring down under the awning portal. That's it. She's down exploring under there. Comes across weird-looking statues. I think they were. And being slightly inquisitive and curious, goes to check them out and instantly regrets it because she gets changed into a guy.
Oh, this!
Wow.
Oh gosh, I was like, "What is this? What is this?" That Tony's laughing at? Oh, this part.
That part.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither of us could stop laughing, and it was just. I was like, "What do I do now? This is just
what is happening?
what is happening?" So yeah, that was definitely a favourite player moment, especially recently.
Because it was so unexpected.
Yes, it was brilliant. A favourite DM moment recently. Again, it's something really small, but playing through Storm Kings, we had a session. I'd obviously done a certain amount of prepping beforehand, but then there was kind of quite a bit that was happening that I hadn't kind of been expecting, so I was very much on the fly, kind of pulling things out of nowhere, creating NPCs on the fly and all this kind of thing. And my group had gone into a library to do some research. They were trying to research giants, and one of the members of the party is a dwarf fighter, and dwarves and elves tend to kind of look down on one another somewhat, and my fighter doesn't think a lot of elves, and, so I created this elven, high elf NPC, very hoity-toity, very, looking down his nose, right? And the elf NPC and the fighter in my party just had this wonderful banter, just sniping back and forth at each other. It was beautiful. I wish I could remember it all, but it was, and it ended, the fighter actually did get the last word, and just very beautifully done. It didn't result in violence or anything like that, which I was very proud of. And it was just one of those moments at the end of the night where, again, because I'd had to pull quite a lot sort of out of nowhere and last minute, and so I just kind of, at the end of the session, kind of went, "Ooh, okay, yeah, that was great." It's good. One of those little moments. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I definitely like those moments where you just get into this flow and it all feels very natural, and you're like, man, I wish I sounded like this in real life all the time, because I could just say whatever's on my mind.
Exactly.
But if there's one thing we've learned about you, Jane, over time, is that you seem nice and quiet, but really you're an instigator, and you like stirring up trouble and making people.
I don't know what you mean. I'm shocked to this.
This will be a pitch to go and visit our Discord. We get to see Jane and I fight about whatever has happened to come up that day. So things like, I don't know, who's better, Americans or Brits, or...
No, that's Ian that starts that.
Yeah, that's all me.
Yeah, no, but you've started it. You've set Ian and I
have
off before.
not.
You wind us up and set us off. It's even worse.
Nice one,
It's true.
Jane.
It's true. You're the mastermind. And we won't go into David Tennant's neckbeard either.
Don't start.
No.
Don't
A man is a
start,
national
lady.
treasure.
Yeah. But he still has a neckbeard, so I don't know. All right. So I had contact information on here. That's if you guys want people to reach out to you, because often we forgot to ask people for Twitter handles or email addresses or Discord, or if you don't want anyone to talk to you, then we don't tell them how to contact you.
Well, I have nothing on that regard, because obviously I'm not creating at the moment, but I just want to make sure that people know that they can find me on our Discord.
Okay.
So I don't know how you want to advertise that out.
We'll say you can find Ian lurking as a moderator on our Discord.
Fine by me.
I'm happy to give my Twitter handle. Yeah, people can find me at Janie Lizzie on Twitter. Yeah, people can find me on Twitch at Vala30. I stream all sorts of different kind of games, so yeah, come check me out there.
Great.
Jane, Ian, thanks so much for joining us on Rules as Written.
Anytime. It's an honour.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
This has been a blast. It's a trap.